So welcome everyone to the second talk on the fourth of the aggregates of clinging, where we cling to a sense of self. And I did the last talk was on thoughts and how we cling to thoughts, and thoughts can be something we cling to as our sense of self. And I mentioned that there's 52 of these mental formations. Most of them are thoughts and emotions. And one of them is intention or volition, which is often when people give the talks on the five aggregates, the fourth one is simply a talk on intention, because it is so key in how we cling to a sense of self. So understanding intention, the Pali word is citana in Pali, and it's how it operates is quite powerful, and you'll see what I mean as we delve into it a little more. It's kind of this volitional aspect, the impulse before we act. So it forms the basis of karma. Which is the law of cause and effect. So it's the word karma or kama in Pali means action, but only intentional, volitional actions lead to karmic results or consequences. So this is really key. So I mean, there's the story of the monk that was. He was a blind monk, and he was doing his walking meditation, and he was stepping on ants as he was walking, and the other monks were saying, "Oh, he's breaking one of the precepts. He's doing harm. This is going to have negative karmic fruits." And the Buddha said, "Well, no, it's not. His heart is pure. It's not. There's no intention to harm. He doesn't realize that he's stepping on these ants, so there's no karmic results." So you can see, so intention has this notion of willfulness. And I can see some people kind of going, willfulness, wait a minute, I thought there was no free will. So that's kind of why I call this the paradox of intention, because you can, once you go down this path with intention, you really do come across some key paradoxes in the practice, and I want to cover some of those. Okay, so it's physical, verbal, mental actions. So we have that intention to act, and they have wholesome, unwholesome, or mixed, coming from mixed volitions or intentions. So there's actions that can come from wholesome, unwholesome, or mixed volitions that produce karma or kama. So there's a metaphor that was often used, comes from agriculture. So one sows a seed in the ground, and then there's kind of a time lag during which some mysterious, invisible process takes place, and then a plant pops out of the ground and can be harvested. That's kind of like the way that intention and karma works. So there's the seeds are planted as we go through our day. We're planting all these seeds, and we don't often see we can sometimes see the immediate consequences, but often it's just kind of an invisible process that's going on, and then the fruits of those intentions and volitions spring forth as consequences. So the wholesome intentions have a wholesome result, or fruit, you could say, the fruit of action. And this all, of course, links into rebirth. These which is another topic that, if we get into, has a lot of discussion that could go on, in that these karmic seeds can spring forth in this lifetime or within the Buddha's cosmology into a future lifetime. So these intentional actions can lead to a rebirth. So the cycle of samsara continues. Of course, the question that comes up for many people as well, if intentional actions lead to rebirth, how is the idea of rebirth reconciled with the notions of impermanence and no self? That's what is reborn? In other words, there's no self. And it's interesting, in the early Pali texts, so the earliest Buddha's teachings, where Theravadan Buddhism comes from, there's really no explicit theory that was presented around rebirth and karma and how it's all worked out. In fact, the Buddha in those early texts really told people to kind of not to spend their precious time pondering and philosophizing about that, but rather to get down to what is causing suffering in their daily lives. There's the sutta of the poison arrow, which is a very interesting sutta, where there was person's shot with a poison arrow, and instead of taking out the arrow, is asking all these questions, more philosophical questions. Where did this arrow come from? Where was it produced? Who shot this arrow? And he was going on with all these questions. And the teaching of the Buddha was, well, we'll die in the time it takes you to answer all those, and you'll suffer immensely in the time it takes you to answer all those questions. The intelligent thing to do is just to pull out the arrow. And he was really pointing to dealing with that immediate suffering in our experience, rather than philosophizing about all the imponderable questions, as he called them. So he really avoided, in the early texts, answering those questions. Of course, Buddhist schools went on to develop quite elaborate theories and complex metaphysical explanations for all of it, and those can be referred to as well. Mahayana Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism have some fairly complex discussions of these things that explain karma. So it's one of the most significant of the mental formations, intention. That about to moment, that's just a rising of an intention that you're about to do something. You're about to move the body. You can, if you're really in a meditative state, you can actually sense you can see the thought, especially with bodily movements, see the thought, the intention, the impulse arise to move the body. You can actually feel the intention to have a thought arise just before the thought arises as well, if the mind is quite still. An intense retreat we can investigate this at a deep level. My first kind of, I guess you could call it, sense of the not self nature of intention happened on a retreat with Matt, one of my teachers. And we were just doing a walking meditation back and forth. And if you do walking meditation long enough, if you do it for hours on end over a course of weeks, what happened to me, at least, is I started to get a little bit mechanical, right? You do your sitting, and then sitting, you do, you have this practice that you're engaging in. Then walking, sensing the feet. I was getting into a kind of a mechanical, the mind was very still, but the body was just kind of moving. And I had my path, right? You walk back and forth on a path rather than, it's not a sightseeing tour when you do walking meditation. You're just really feeling into the body. So you pick a lane and you just walk back and forth. I usually put a stick on the ground and another stick, and I walk between the two sticks, and I walk and I stop. And I was standing there, and of course, I'm at the turning around point. I was standing there and I could see the intention arising to turn around to the right. I thought, whoa, this is no longer mechanical. I actually see this intention. So I just noticed it, but I didn't turn. I just stood there, and then I noticed the intention again arise to turn around to the right. I thought, am I doing this? Let me just wait a sec. What am I doing here? The me. What's the ego do? And so I stood there some more, and then the intention arose to turn to the left. I thought, well, I definitely didn't do that. And so I just kind of saw that these are just arising. These are intentions just arising based on unknown causes and conditions, especially in this case, because it's just a very subtle thought arising. And it really, it sounds like a simple story perhaps, but I really saw deeply that intentions are just arising. They weren't without my consent. They were not anything I created or did. But also that the arising of these intentions direct actions, right? They direct how we move through the world. It was directing which way I turned. It sounds very simple in a walking meditation, but when you put it into the context of your life, it's directing what you do moment to moment in terms of behavior and actions in the world, which has a great significance, right? Directing how decisions get made, and what we do, how our practice even unfolds. It's all intentions unfolding. So you can see how powerful and significant this is. It's present in every single moment, and nothing happens without it. So how do we relate to these? It's not self, but they're very powerful in terms of how our life unfolds and where our intention even lands. It's it carries what's the word? Powerful momentum. The intentions can build, and you can see how they plant seeds for what might happen in future outcomes. So not every intention, the result unfolds in the immediate, in the present moment. Sometimes it takes time, just like the seed germinating in the ground. I had an interesting experience. I got a messenger message from an old neighbor going back 10 years, over 10 years. And she said that I just applied to the St. Paul's University pastoral counseling program, and I was accepted, and I'm overjoyed with this. And she said, I've been thinking about this since I had a conversation with you 12 years ago about how this really fit with what my interests were. And I was just remembering that you planted the seed for this to unfold. And I thought, well, I'm giving a talk on intention, that relates very closely to the whole idea of, you can have a conversation with somebody and you may not know what seeds you're planting and what those seeds what they'll germinate into. They come down the road. So being, very conscious of our actions, our intentions that then move into actions. There's a sutta where the Buddha gives advice to his young son about the importance of intention, and he says to him, use, when you act, use your actions as a mirror to reflect back, right? So you can, I guess, learn from what actions you undertook. So to reflect back and on the quality of your mind in that moment when the intention arose and then it became an action. So reflecting back, and also reflect on what is arising. We can be very conscious of what's happening now, and we can be of what we did. And he also recommended that associate with virtuous, generous, and wise people to develop his intentions, and to always ask, is this going to lead to harm for myself or others? That being a key aspect of whether he proceeded. So intentions are key in that moment to moment. Intentions are also key in setting our orientation for our practice, for our life. So when I say your practice, it's one aspect of your life, but this applies to everything. So what is the most important thing in your life? So to reflect on that, what is the most important thing? And for your practice, this is important because you must have a name or an orientation to your practice. And this comes from intentions that then kind of build into an orientation. And without an orientation to your practice, you'll just wander aimlessly. Like grab a teaching here and a teaching there, and a book here and a book there, attend a meditation class here and another one there. And you're just kind of wandering without any real orientation, without any real aim to your practice. And this is different from setting goals. I'm going to play a talk in a minute that will hopefully make this clear as well, from Alan Watts. It's different from setting goals. Goals are in the future, right? So when we set a goal, we set up a standard that we want to meet in the future. Does that sound like what a goal means to you? Is something you set up, you set, and you want to try to, so you set the standard, here I am now, and this is the standard where I want to be in the future. If you think about that, that's simply setting up a struggle with the present moment. How do you let the unfold, allow nature to unfold when you have goals that you're always interfering with the present moment? But you can have an orientation. An orientation is different. It's more about what we value. What is most important to you? What's your most important thing? And I invite you to make that a contemplation. What is the most important thing? Try to boil it down. And one thing, so I don't want you to do your top 10 things or 5 or 3, just one thing that's most important to you. And it's a contemplation that can take months. So don't sort of, jump at the first thing that pops into your mind, because that could be what somebody else told you should be your most important thing. So really looking deeply at what is your most important thing. I asked Vida, my wife, this question. We would go on these morning walks with the dog, and usually end up talking about the Dharma somehow. And I mentioned about this most important thing question. She says, "Oh, that's interesting." So I said, "Well, what do you think? What is your most important thing?" And she said, "I'd like to meditate more." I said, "Well, why do you want to meditate more?" She said, "Because it's healthy." I said, "Well, why do you want to be healthy?" She said, "Well, because I want to live longer." So, well, you want to live long? And you can see, I just kept saying, "Well, but why?" She says, "So I can spend time with my loved ones." I said, "Well, why do you want to spend time with your loved ones?" She said, "Oh, so I just want to express love." I said, "Oh, okay." So that one didn't take months, but it actually boiled down from a statement that we were able um, to boil down to. And I said, "Well, what's your second most important thing?" That one didn't kind of boil down quite as much. It's kind of went, "Well, I like to travel. Why do you like to travel?" "I like to learn." "Why do you like to learn?" And it kind of progressed into in that kind of way. But what is discovering what is your most important thing? To got a few minutes left. Play a talk. It's an old talk. Remember Alan Watt? See some older people here that might have actually got into this practice because of Alan Watts. I know Alan Watts was a major influence on me. So he's got some interesting words on this the whole way that we make decisions and how intention. I sent this to my daughter because she's an admitted overthinker. She likes to overthink her decisions. So let me open this. Okay, I share it. Okay.
Lao Tzu puts it in this way: the great Tao flows everywhere, both to the left and to the right. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. And when merits are accomplished, it lays no claim to them. The more, therefore, you relinquish power, trust others, the more powerful you become. But in such a way that instead of having to lie awake nights controlling everything, you do it beautifully by trusting the job to everyone else. And they carry it on for you. This seems a sort of paradox to say this, but the principle of unity, of coming to a sense of oneness with the whole of the rest of the universe, is not to try to obtain power over the rest of the universe. That will only disturb it and antagonize it and make it seem less one with you than ever. The way to become one with the universe is to trust it as another, and say, let's see what you're going to do. But in doing that, you see, in saying that to everything else that you have been taught to think is not you, you are also saying it to yourself. Because finally, as I pointed out, you do not know where your decisions come from. They pop up like hiccups. And when you make a decision, People have a great deal of anxiety about making decisions. So when we decide, we're always worrying, did I think this over long enough? Did I take enough data into consideration? And if you think it through, you find you never could take enough data into consideration. Any given situation is infinite. So what you do is, you go through the motions of thinking out what you will do about this. And then when the time comes to act, you make a snap judgment. I mean, I'm speaking a little extremely, making some fun of it and so on, because after all, we do occasionally get the vague outlines of things and make a right decision on rational grounds. But we fortunately forget the variables that could have interfered with this coming out right. It's amazing how often it works. But warriors are people. Think of all the variables beyond their control and what might happen. So then when you make a decision, and it works out all right, I think very little of it has much to do with your conscious intent and control. The more you let go of it and trust it, as if it were quite other than you, the more you realize the inseparable identity of self and other. If you ever saw, for example, the film Kon-Tiki, this man figured out things as to sail from South America to the Pacific Islands. But once he had set this in motion, he discovered that all sorts of unexpected factors cooperated with him. That when the wood got wet, it expanded so that the ties bit into it and held it completely secure. He had never expected that. And he found that as he sailed along, a flying fish would simply alight flat on the deck every morning for breakfast. That all kinds of natural factors, it was just, he touched the key where he was flowing with the course of nature, and everything cooperated with him. Because he had touched the key, he had made the act of faith.
So there's lots to think about in that, in the way that Alan Watts presents intention and the way that we think about intention. So intention's not self, but at the same time, intention has consequences. So although our intentions are not ours, we're still responsible for what we do in the world. So in that way, intention has that moral aspect to it. You know, if you look at the Eightfold Path, right intention is the second, and it connects to harmlessness, right speech, right livelihood. But on the other hand, intentions are just arising without our consent. So how do you manage in that? Tension's just arising. So you're conscious. You're becoming conscious of what's arising as intentions, right? You're not in control. You can just see them arising, and you can see what arises next in terms of action. you're conscious. So I'll leave it there, and yeah, I'll open it up for questions.